Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It is finally time for us to do the Signal Sleuth build guide. There is one more change I'm going to make on the PCBs, but it's nothing that's going to affect this in any way. It's just going to add one more kind of configuration option, and I'm not going to tell you about it. You'll have to wait and see. But again, it's not going to change anything. So to start off, let's go over all of the parts that will be needed to complete this. This is a USB to UART. This will be needed to program the newer BW16s, and even some of the older ones I think for some reason don't have the firmware we need, but we'll get to that more in just a minute whenever we start talking about the different firmwares. So you'll need that to program the new BW16s, and most likely all of the kits will come with the new BW16s. There will be a couple of the OG supporters that get the older version, and that's just because I have a couple extra laying around, and I want to get things out as quick as I can, so I don't want to have to wait for more of these to come in whenever I already have everything I needed to put out a few. So yeah, you need a BW16. Put it up there. You need the PCB. You need two ESP32 Room 32Us, specifically the Room 32Us. That has the external antenna adapter and it's pinned right. Everything fits perfect. So yeah, you need two ESP32s. The PCB, like I already mentioned. Battery. This is the specific battery board you will need. I don't even know if there's a specific name to it. It is the one that you can find all over Amazon. You find them on AliExpress, but it is available. It's an 18650 battery shield that holds 4 18650s. These are 11mm standoffs. They just accept a 3mm screw. We still have the temperature sensor, the 4.7K resistor, the screen. I believe these come in white and blue. Those are the two colors I've seen most, and it will be completely different on which one you get. It's just going to be which one I happen to have in stock. I've got a mixture of them right now. The GPS unit, and I will write down the specifics to these. Like this is the ATGM336H. I'll write down the specifics and just put some affiliate Amazon links, which I will tell you, to fully buy everything from Amazon other than the PCB, it's like $160. It gets pretty expensive getting everything from Amazon. But you also need a micro USB charger. You'll need an SD card as well, micro SD card. I am not including them this time around. They can be so finicky, and I know if you're like me, you've got a lot laying around anyway. So 16 gigabytes max is what's suggested by Joseph Jhewitt, and he's the one who wrote the firmware. The antenna for the GPS, this is the one that I will send with every order, but I will also include another SMA pigtail so that you can do an SMA style antenna for the GPS, like here, like I have here. This little pill bottle looking thing. So that'll be an option to you, and I will send the hardware needed for it, but you will have to provide that antenna yourself. Then female and male 2-pin headers. These will be to connect the main board to the battery board. And then 3 SMA pigtails. These are specifically board mounted. They're kind of hard to find, but like I said, I'll link them down below in the description. And then 8 I think 6mm. It's 3x6mm socket head screws, bolts, whatever you want to call them. I think 6mm will be enough with the case. I'm not 100% sure yet. I haven't completely finished designing the case, but there should be plenty of room with these. If not, I'll mention that we need longer ones. So yeah, that's it. Let's get to it. I'm going to quickly run over flashing. In fact, while we're sitting here on the camera, let's go ahead and mark these to what I will flash them with. Anyway, I'm going to quickly go over flashing the ESP32s to what they need, and then we will go a little more in depth, because I haven't mentioned it before and it is a little tricky, on making sure the BW16 is flashed to what it needs to be. So let's move over to my screen and we'll get to flashing. For the ESP32, you will need, it's possible I might get some USB-C boards again. I'm not going to guarantee that, but you will for sure need a micro. It'll either be micro, USB micro, or USB-C. And then for the BW16s, if it's the black board, you'll need USB-C. And then, as mentioned before, you will also need the USB to UART controller. Both of my cords have just happened to all come from hacker boxes. They work great. I use them every time I flash, just about. So let's start with flashing the ESP32s. So we have an A and a B board. This is best done. It's not necessarily best done. You can do it in whatever program you want. I have only ever used Arduino IDE for it, so that's what we're going to use. There are a couple specifics I want to go over with Arduino IDE. Because there have been some issues in flashing that people have been running into. So I want to make sure we get that done. Currently I have A, so let's go ahead and plug in A. Oh, before we plug in A, I'm not updating anything because I want it to be all these specific versions. So let's open up the wardriver GitHub, which is where you will download these files, and I'll put a link to it down in the description. Just the files for the ESP32s. I'm not going to link to where to get the files for the BW16, but if you follow along, you'll be able to find them no issue. So on Joseph Jhewitt's wardriver GitHub, we want to look specifically at the flashing section. You can follow these instructions and everything will work just fine. The things that I want you to take care to notice is whenever you're adding the board, and he doesn't specifically mention it here, but there has been an issue with using too new of a version of the ESP32. So you'll go to this website, you'll follow everything needed to get to it. Once you add this JSON to Arduino, where it says File, Preferences, Tools, Boards, Board Manager, that's where it'll be added. So you see here I have Board Manager already pulled up. So let's look up the ESP32. Now there are two of them. We don't want the Arduino. We want the ESP32 by Expressive Systems. And this is where people have been getting a little messed up. And I'm not calling out any one person Everybody has gotten messed up by this because of the updates. But for specifically board B to flash, it needs to be 2.0.12. So whenever you install it, drop down and grab 2.0.12 and then hit install. And then don't update it if you happen to have already updated it, then downgrade it back to this 2.0.12. That is the version we need to flash these. So for the other things, like this MicroNEMA, the Adafruit GFX library, all this, whenever you install them, make sure you install them according to the version number that is called out right here. A lot of them will have updates past this, but the code was written with and for these versions. So these are the versions you need. You may run into issues if you use a newer version of them. And then finally, the last thing you need to check before downloading the INI files, or what are they? INO files, not INI. Last thing you need to check before that is your board settings. So under Tools, you'll see right here is all my board settings. You want to match these up with what's called out right here. One that has, I guess, changed on me a couple of times, even though this is pretty much the only thing I use Arduino IDE for, at least here recently. For some reason, the partition scheme has changed back to the default on me a few times, but it does need to be at this minimal SPIFS 1.9 megabytes APP with OTA. So that is the partition scheme you need to keep. So once that's done, you'll go up here to Code, download zip. Wherever you download it, unzip it. I've already got them open, so I'm not going to re-download them. But what you'll do is you'll go and, this is A, so we're going to plug in the board I have marked as A. We'll plug it in. It'll tell you the COM here. It should automatically connect to it. If not, just select the right one, and then you're going to hit upload. And I'll fast forward through this section because it takes a little while, but just be patient while it does it, and then once it's done, we'll move to board B. See, once it starts uploading, it goes pretty quick. And then if you go to the serial monitor, all it's going to do is keep saying SD begin failed, no SD card attached, and it'll just keep saying that over and over. So now you can unplug your board A. And we'll plug in board B. And oh, that's an edit, that's why. And then we're going to go and open board B. For board B, it's the same thing. Plug in board B. Go ahead and double check all the settings are the same. Everything should still be the same from board A, especially if you're opening it fresh. Then you will hit upload. Once again, compiling takes a little while. Once it actually starts to flash, it's pretty quick. And I'll get back with you when it's done. Alright, it's done. I don't know. Okay, so board B, it just keeps saying in whenever it's done. No more addresses. Go through all its starting. Then it'll start scanning. So let's go ahead and change that before. And we'll disconnect B. Now for a little bit more difficulty. So we can get out of Arduino IDE. We do not need it anymore. And what I do want you to open up, and I'll have a link below, is Luke Switzer. I hope I pronounced that right. He's helped me a ton. has posted in his GitHub the instructions for flashing this BW16. So we're going to follow these instructions. Let me put it over here where I'm not in front of it. Okay. We can swap to the USB-C. And I think he has most everything we're going to need linked. If not, again, I'll link everything below. But let's get started. So, instructions for Windows. So first thing we're going to want to do is prepare the device. On the back of the device, it'll list everything, just like it shows in the picture there. It'll list everything. What you're going to want to do is take RX1 and TX1 and jump them to logical TX0 and RX1. But what you want to do, as he states right here, you're going to jump TX to logical RX, and you're going to jump RX to logical TX, so they can kind of talk to one another. So let's double check. I've got yellow on RX and RX, so I didn't jump them properly. So I want yellow on RX and yellow on logical TX, and I have orange on TX and orange on logical RX. So that is set properly now. So now, before we connect it, he says go ahead and connect via USB. I'm going to hold off on that for just a second. Now we need to get this Ambia image tool, which is another GitHub link, and specifically it is, where'd it go? Image tool exe. I went ahead and just downloaded the whole thing. So once you do that, you're going to go to this Ambia SDK. You're going to unflash it. It's going to be flat or zipped. You're going to unzip it. It's going to be zipped. So you're going to go into it, tools, Ambia D, image tool, and we're going to open up the image tool exe. If this pops up, just hit continue. You're good. It's popped up for me every time I've opened it now, and it still works. So now if we scroll down a little further in his instructions, you're going to see to select the proper chip. We're going to go up here to chip select, and we want to select the Ambia D 8721D. You can open it up again and make sure checkbox is next to it. You see that's what he selected as well. So now we are going to go ahead and connect via USB. And I've run into this issue every time. So if you connect, and this may be why he says connect via USB first. So before you open Ambia D image tool, go ahead and connect your USB, open it again, or open it, and then your serial will pop up. The baud rate is fine. Very important, right here. You're going to change this the size from 4 kilobytes to 2 megabytes, or 2048 kilobytes. And the first thing we want to do is hit erase. And down here it'll say flash error class clear flash status failed register. That's fine. Run it again. I've had that happen for every board now. The first time it fails, and it's still failing. So let's double check I have all my pins set. Talking to Luke, he's never had this issue, but I have, even specifically for just erasing it. And he mentions it here too. So you can hold burn and plug it in to get it into boot mode as well, and then hit erase. Flash erase is done. Okay, so now what you want to do is you want to check this top one, and you want to go to that wonderful site that we all use for things that just can't be found anymore. It's a place where they archive things. And at this place where they archive things, you want to search files, specifically the BW16. And looky there. At the archive site, you have the BW16 AT firmware. The AT firmware is what we need. Okay, so now you're going to want to check this first KM boot all bin, and we're going to want to browse, and I'm going to pull that off just to make it easier to blur in a little bit. But you're going to want to browse to where you downloaded from that archive website the firmware for this specific thing. You're just going to hit browse, find it, download it. Everything should be the same. It should already be in boot mode. And we're going to hit download. Let it do its thing. Progress board is going to go on. And I will get back to you once this is done. Okay, once it's done, it really won't, and the only indication you're going to have is all images are successfully sent successfully, and then the COM port that was used was done. So if everything went well, we are going to use PuTTY. I prefer PuTTY to the Arduino firmware. So first thing we're going to do is we're just going to see if it got the main stuff. So just unplug your device, plug it back in. You're going to go to serial. You're going to connect it to COM. In my case, it's COM 15, and I just know that from what it was connected to here. Go ahead and close that out. And we are going to want to connect at 11.5200 baud rate speed, and we're going to open that. and then you can hit reset on your BW16, and we're going to see it all come up. ATUART config is at 38400. So it looks like it worked. So we're going to go ahead and unplug the BW16, and we're just going to check one more thing about it. So to check this is where, again, the UART isn't required, but it helps double check everything is working properly. So you're going to take those same jumper wires and you're going to connect them to RX and TX on the USB to UART. And then to RX and TX on the BW16. Then you also need to add I'm just doing 3.3 volt. That's all that the signal sleuth is going to give the BW16 board anyway. So we'll jump 3 volt, and we're going to add ground, which I'm representing as brown jumper, and then you're going to take and unplug your USB-C and plug this in. Obviously, if you have extra ports, then you don't have to unplug your USB-C. I use a laptop for this and have every port filled. So for this one, probably want to go into Device Manager, COM ports, Silicon Labs COM 12. Okay, so this is using COM port 12. We'll open PuTTY back up. Serial COM port 12, and this is going to be at 38400. We're going to open it up. There we go. So I just hit space. So, and it does want caps. So let's start with AT. AT is okay. So now we're going to do ATWS. And there it goes. I'm going to have to blur these out, but it just did a quick search and it found everything. So it shows that that is working. It shows that everything is working. So now that we have everything properly flashed, we can actually get to the assembly of the wardriver. So let's move back to the overhead cam, and we'll get this thing assembled. I just realized I didn't preheat my iron. So while that preheats, we'll talk a little bit about some things. This is also going to be my test that these pads all work properly, because I already have, and we'll go ahead and talk about this, the BW16 pads, and that's what we'll jump first. But you can use either one of these boards, the older green board or the new black board, on on the signal sleuth. On the back of the signal sleuth PCB, I have jumper pads. I didn't really do them in any specific order, but BW16 version 1.2 blackboard is all in the box that it's in. BW16 version 1, which is the green board, is all in this box. So before you add your BW16, really before you do anything, it's probably easiest to go ahead and solder these. We are using the version 1.2, so that is what we are going to go ahead and solder. Let's get this work area a little more organized. So those two go there. We're not going to need the battery board for a minute. We'll just throw it off to the side. That goes together. Just get these over here. We also don't need the screws for a little bit, so, or the bolts. We'll throw them off. Same thing with the standoffs. The antennas aren't super important right away. And we'll get everything with where it needs to go. So like I said, we are going to start by just jumpering the appropriate pads. This is so much easier than the way I designed it on the first boards. Let me see if I have one of those sitting around. I can show you real quick. So on this board, you can see that they're jumper pads, so there's barely any space in between them. On this board, I used just like an SMD mounted resistor pads. That was actually a lot harder to jump that distance than these, so this is so much more simple. So yeah, once you get them all jumped, you should be good. Now we can start soldering everything else in. Let's start with our temperature sensor. Actually, let's start with our resistor. It really doesn't matter what order you do these in. It's just a matter of getting it all done. In fact, I'm just going to talk through it and then time lapse the rest of it. After we get these two things soldered in, we're just going to I'll talk about anything special, and then we'll time lapse it. So with this temperature sensor, you got to be real careful to not get too much solder on these pins. Because they're easy to jump when they're this close. So I'm just going to take my solder sucker and try to suck up some of that solder. I put too much. It doesn't need to take much, just enough to keep it from jumping. Alright, one thing I'm going to try this. This may not even work either. I'm going to try to cut it down as flush as possible. And see if maybe if they don't have so much up high to... There we go. So yeah, I see why Joseph Jhewitt made those spots, spread them out a little bit. It definitely is harder to solder them like this. But I have faith in you. You can do it. I've done it a couple times now. It works. I like how easily and flush it slides in when it's this tight of a tolerance. You just have to be a little careful about not putting too much solder down when you do it. That's probably the hardest solder piece. That or the antennas is going to be the hardest part. The rest is simple. So I have the ground pin on every thing marked, or on the 3 smaller modules, and on the microcontroller boards I have the antennas marked for where they go. The one other thing that I need to point out that changes based on which BW16 you're using. So if you look at the BW16s, the new board actually has less pins, but I have it set up so those should go into the same spot. Let's see. You can see right there I have BW16-kit version 1.2 pins start here. So you're going to take that top corner pin and start it right there. So it's going to have 2 empty pins below and 2 empty pins above. So what I like to do with soldering all of these components is I like to just get 1 pin soldered so I can pick it up, because see, it's not flush. So I'll get 1 pin soldered, pick it up, melt that pin back down, and press everything in so it's held in. Another thing I like to do is I like to go through and just solder 1 pin and then go through and trim all the headers so that all of the solder joints are nice and smooth. So follow what's on the board. Everything that goes on the labeled side. B will go here, A here, all these components here. And the one other thing that I need to mention is the SD card. I did do it the same way Joseph Jhewitt did, and I have it upside down. So you'll solder the pins in like this. I'm just going to solder 1 to get this through. So like I said, I like to solder it and take and straighten it. And then it is going to go upside down just like that. And I have it set up so that the micro SD card does hang off the board just a little bit, and hopefully in my case design I'll be able to accommodate that, make it a little easier to pull out the SD cards. So now that you kind of see where it all goes, I'm going to time lapse this part, go through and solder all of these boards on, and then once we get back to the antennas I'll come back and talk to you. Okay, so I just took and cut all of the header pins off. To me, it's much easier, much quicker to go ahead and just do that. Then you don't keep running into the header pins as you solder. So let's get those done so we can move on to the antennas. Okay, so that's that. That brings us to the antennas. It is set up to where it really doesn't matter where or what side you put these on. I am only in the assembled versions, so the OGs. If you want me to solder the GPS antenna on as well, hit me up in my DMs. Send me a message, send me an email, just get a hold of me, and I'll make a note on your order to go ahead and solder that on. Otherwise, this will just be included loose for you to add on yourself if you decide to change to a different GPS antenna. So they do fit nicely underneath the board and between the main board and the battery board. Okay, I'm going to do the outside ones first. So one thing to take note with these is they take a lot of solder, and also they get hot quick. So they don't straighten, they don't go like perfectly straight right away. So you do need to adjust them after you solder that first one, but you cannot hold it very long before it burns. The holes in these are a little big, so maybe I'll adjust them a little bit specifically for the antennas. And it's going to be impossible for me to get all of these straight, so if you did order, if you're one of the OGs, you're getting an assembled one, just keep that in mind. If it's not perfectly straight, I will do my best. See, it looks pretty straight to me, but they're probably still off. And it's a lot more noticeable if they're off once you add the antennas. So anyway, you do want to go ahead and solder all 4 points of these. On my very first one, I only soldered one to begin with, just to test it, and it didn't take but 1 or 2 changing of the antennas for it to break off. Once you get all 4 soldered though, it's plenty sturdy. Basically just to keep them from twisting and moving. Alright, so that's pretty simple. Now what you'll do is you'll just pass these through this hole and connect them to whichever device you want. So with these 3, that does bring me to one other thing that I forget about. That is an absolute pain to solder, but it can be done. We have to add the IPEX antenna to the BW16 IPEX adapter. This is going to be the part that wears on me the most, is getting this little connector done. I will send these with every kit. I may even send 2 because they're easy to ruin. And I really don't know the best way to go about soldering these. It may be solder paste and a heat gun. I haven't tried that yet. But you have to solder that little bitty thing on top of there. And what you want to do is towards the heat spreader, there's room for 1 pin, and I probably won't be able to show this on capture this on video just because it is such a small component. Okay, I don't know if you can see that or not, but there is a line from the center to the outside, and that is the side that you're going to want to solder closest to that outside heat. So I think from what I have found, the easiest way to do this is perfectly clear tip. You're going to want to add very, very little solder on top of these pads that already looked tinned. And I mean very little solder. And then you're going to want to take, let's see, I've got solder on the tip. Okay, that's on there. Let's see, I got it soldered on there, but I know I'm not going to be able to get the tip. I absolutely hate soldering these things on. So for all of the things that I think are better about this one, I also think this is worse. And I have no idea where my wick is. Alright, I think that's on there. So again, that's like the hardest part to solder. Everything else is pretty simple. Alright, so there was one thing I forgot, and I'm coming back to record it now. This will probably be somewhere in the middle of the video, but at the same time I can show you the case that I finished. So the case I uploaded doesn't say OG supporter. You just get one that, or the one on printables and Maker World, just to have the Signal Sleuth logo. And then you have a spacer board that separates the battery board and the Signal Sleuth. And then the battery cover, which will help kind of protect the batteries and keep them in. But the one thing I forgot, and it is mentioned in the comments of the previous video, which I'll end up taking down this and repost it with this section in it. But on the BW16, the external antenna will not work until you flip a resistor jumper pad thing. So now we need to go in and remove the shield to start with. Alright, to do so we're going to go ahead and add some flux along the edges of it, just to help get it to come off. And this can probably be done with a regular soldering iron, but from what I understand it's much easier with a heat gun. So one thing I saw online said, you know, put about 320 or something with low air. Okay. So it'd take about a minute, just run around the edges. And there it goes. I got a little impatient. I bumped it up to 360. Didn't take too long. Throw your tweezers underneath. And truthfully, at this point, it may be easier to solder on the antenna. If you do plan to use the BW16 with an external antenna, you do need to remove the heat shield. You don't necessarily need to put the heat shield back on. It should be fine without it. But as you can see, I don't know how well you can see. All of those little bitty components are itty bitty. I don't have my microscope set up, so I can't show you exactly. But let's see how close we can get. I believe right here is a little bitty resistor. You need to move that resistor from this side to the other side. Or it's just a 0 ohm resistor, so you can just jump the other side, but you do need to remove that one that's there. So let's start by removing that resistor. And that I am going to use my normal soldering iron for. Now these are very, very small components, so you gotta be a little careful. You don't want to end up breaking something. I will post a picture over the screen right now showing exactly what to do, or showing exactly which thing to desolder and resolder. In fact, I'm going to look at it myself right now so that I have it. So this is another GitHub I'll post in the description. This is how to mod the Jhewitt wardriver. So it'll take you through all the steps, but it actually mentions where to jump. So you could barely see it on the camera. This image actually greatly blows it up very nicely. So what's in red is the 0 ohm resistor that's currently there. You either want to reuse it or jump it to these sides. So there's 3 pads here. Right now the 0 ohm resistor is here. You want to move it to this side. And that will allow the external antenna to work. Here's some more pictures of it. This is before. This is after. Okay. So let me get this as big as possible for you to see. So again, red is the resistor you're removing. You need to jump it over here. So no connection at all right here, only here. It's very small. If you have magnifying glass or a microscope, I highly suggest using it. Like I said, mine's not available right now, so I'm going to try it without it, but we'll get it done. A super fine tip soldering iron would probably be very helpful as well. But that is another thing I don't have out right now. Can't even see where that went. I know it's gone. Man, that's an itty bitty soldering thing. Okay, so now you want to jump the other side very carefully. It is going to be too simple to get too much solder. Okay, I'm going to have to get my other soldering iron real quick. So this is my TS101. It's a soldering iron I have been very happy with. And I got multiple tips for it. This one's a really small tip. Hopefully it'll help jump those pads. It heats up real quick. It's already at 350 and I just plugged it in. Okay, there, I think I have it. I do need to find like a magnifying glass or something because I can't even see that. Nope, I've definitely got it. Okay. So after you get that done, connect that back. And you're good to go. You want to be careful that if you're going to leave the shield off, you can put the shield back on if it so pleases you. I'm just going to leave it off. It's so much easier. But after you get that jumped, you should be good. Now you just, I had these in just to hold the board. Finish whatever you have left to put together. Like I said, I'm not sure what part of the video I'm putting this in. But get it finished assembled and you should be good to go. That should actually work now. If that's a little too daunting for you, which I completely understand if it is, it really kind of is for me too. I don't like working with components that small with just a hand iron. But if that is a little more than you're willing to handle, I was still Like on all of these I've built so far, I've built without jumping that particular piece, and I've had 0 issues in connecting or finding 5G. It just won't be as strong as a connection. So like I mentioned before, if you don't want to bother with doing that, doing everything we just did, you can always use whichever one of these you were planning to use for the BW16 on your GPS, and then get a GPS, and you will still find 5 gigahertz networks. It just won't be as strong as having an external antenna. So I'll leave that up to you to decide. Once again, I'm pretty proud of my case, so let's go ahead and show it off one more time now that it's all together. It's a chunky boy, but it works really well. Let me show you one with batteries in it. My personal, the one I will keep. This one's actually going out to supporter, but the one I will keep, see, it holds the batteries pretty well. I mean, this one could be knocked out if you hit something hard enough. I'm not really too worried about it though, but they were all pretty well protected. It's a thick boy, but I think it came out real well. It's kind of nice to have it chunky. And one of the big things I want to do is leave a flat edge so that you can just stand it up. You can stand it up, you can lay it down, whatever. Now back to the rest of the assembly. All right. I'm just going to bring my battery bank over here. To power these, it doesn't power well from A. You need to power it from B. I say that, but nothing's getting power currently. So the BW16 isn't showing power currently, which no is not a good sign. I can't remember if it does show a light. I know the green one doesn't show a light, so it kind of throws you off. Okay, so it should be showing a light. Oh, good. Thank God. So, double check your jumpers. There we go. Whew. So afraid. That light does look a little dim to me. That may be fine. It's powered up. I'm pretty sure everything else is good. So we're going to go ahead and finish connecting it, and I'll show you how to boot them up or get them connected and everything. And whenever we do that, we'll test and make sure it's working. So now let's go ahead and get the battery board added. So the way I have found, to me, that is the easiest to do this is to go ahead and thread your screws. Just hand tighten. You can hand tighten it. You can go ahead and torque it down a little bit. That'll keep it from spinning on you. And just go ahead and put all of these standoffs in your battery board, or on your battery board. And you'll put one on each hole all around. There's 4 spots for them. 2, 3, 4. So that's the fourth one. Man, that feels loose. It's just the plastic though. Anyway, so now this is the last bit of soldering we'll do. We'll take the two jumpers, go ahead and insert it, the male into the female. And it really doesn't matter, you know, if male's on this, female's on this, it doesn't matter. It's whichever you want to do. But I take it, you got the 5 volt and ground. Find your 5 volt, which is this side. Pretty much as long as you put USB-A up, you should be good. And then take and put it on. And then just take and put in a couple of screws. So yeah, now see, you just got the GPS antenna hanging around. Just, you know, you can tape it, whatever. Like I said, this spacer and the whole case I finish will be available on printables, so you'll be able to download it and print it to make it much easier. So like with this one, I took that spacer and just put a bottom on it, and I have the GPS antenna ran through, and it's just sitting inside the print right here. No glue, no nothing. Okay, back to this one. We're just about done. So now that we've got it all done, what we need to do is we need to solder our little pins. So this is the last 4 joints to solder. There's nothing special about them. Just get them soldered. I'm still learning these battery boards. This 4x battery board works different than the 2x. Like to power this one on, you hold the white button, which is the same as the 2x. But to power it off, you hold it on the 4x, where on the 2x you double press it. So anyway, there's a cold solder joint. Anyway, that's it. Now they are together. You can unscrew them. They come apart. Put them back together. It's so nice. So you'll be able to, if you want to have the battery pack, have it on. If you don't, unscrew it. 3D print you it back like this, and go just USB only. Okay. So now, I don't know. The antennas may change slightly. I do know that, at least for a little bit, they will ship with these ones, but they might change slightly just based on what's available. So don't get your hopes up for a specific antenna. I suspect that most of you will replace them with something a little stronger. Like on the one I run the most, I have these big 6 dB, I think, and these are just 3 dB. But see, once you put the antennas on, you can see that they're crooked. So you can work to get those straighter if you want. That's how it comes out most of the time for me. So now I'm going to set up a test Wi-Fi environment so that I can show you all how to set this up, and we will get moved back over to the desktop and main screen. So one of the first things you want to do after you get it done is you want to take your micro SD card, plug it into your computer. You're not going to have any files on your micro SD card. Format it to FAT32 and you'll be good. But you want to plug it into your computer, right click, create new, text document, and Windows. If you're doing this on Linux, you just want to create a new document, cfg.txt, and then inside of that file you're going to type out SB_BW16 equals yes. And then you can save it. It's done. You can eject it and put it back into the signal sleuth. All that did was enable the use of the BW16 module inside of the signal sleuth to collect 5 GHz networks. So when you have the battery board on, you want to go ahead and power from the battery board, because the battery board's going to take some power too. So if you're powering through here, you're even losing even more into the battery board. The battery board is capable of powering a little bit more, so it's better just to power it from the battery board. So for your first power on, you'll plug it in, wait for the screen to come up. It says starting, and then it's going to come up to a section here in just a second. And it says connect to wardriver.uk- mine says 1287. Yours will say something different. It's a random number at the end, and then an IP address. So now on your computer, you're going to go to your Wi-Fi, find the wardriver network, connect to it. The password is wardriver.uk. No caps. Once you're connected to it, we are going to... Okay, it's connected. We're going to go to that IP address, which is always 192.168.4.1. You can drop down to get a specific password that you want. I'm going to use my little sandbox Wi-Fi I set up. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Simple password just to get it going. Here you can set up a fallback network, I'm going to skip that this time. So now it's done. So now if we look back over, it says connecting, and it gives us a new IP address to connect to, 192.168.8.167. So I've already got that typed in here. We'll just go ahead and go to it. Okay, so once you get in to the signal sleuth, after you set your Wi-Fi, and it'll give you a new address to go to that's on the same your home Wi-Fi. Connect to it, type in that address, and you'll come here. If there's an update up here at the top, you'll see a software update is ready. So if you want to update it, go ahead and click here to view. And it will download them or install them. Mine just says, currently it just says wardriver busy, and it's got a percentage. I don't know if you can see that very well in that screen. I don't think you can. So it's going to download them. It'll give you the SHA-256 of the file. You can go and check it against what Joseph has in his GitHub. But it's going to have one of these bins for each ESP. It doesn't do anything to the BW16. That AT firmware we did at the beginning is the firmware it's going to keep. So see, now we have both. So we'll go ahead and install one. So So it's reset. It's restarted anyway. Go ahead. It still shows an update. It's probably bin B. So we'll go ahead and click to view. And sometimes you have to go through this a couple of times for it to completely take effect. But once it's all done, it'll be ready. So now it's just B. We'll go ahead and hit install. And it'll go through validating the software or the firmware, and then it'll install it. Alright, it updated. Let's go ahead and look back at it and see. No more updates, but we have a new thing at the top. So we can hit wiggle settings, and you can enter your API code from your wiggle. I'm going to go ahead and do it. Oh, no, never mind. I don't have it saved like I thought I did. But anyway, you enter it. You can select these things as you want. Automatically upload files when device starts up. I keep this checked. It works great. I still come in and, especially during the worldwide ward drive, which we just finished, I'll still go in and make sure it uploaded everything. But of the like 4 or 5 drives I did during the worldwide ward drive, it uploaded every one of them. Even if it was powered off multiple times, so it had multiple files to upload, it uploaded them all. So this is a great feature that has been added. It's awesome. Other than that, that is it. Let's move back to the overhead. You now have a completed signal sleuth. It was very simple. Everything's on one side of the board. You have your antennas. The battery board directly attaches to it using these standoffs. Everything works great. If you would like one, link in the description to my store. I will have kits and just bare PCBs available. So if you just want to buy the PCB and source the part yourself, or you already have plenty of the parts, which I know that's the case with many people, go pick up a PCB. I'll get one sent your way. There is going to be a 3 to 4 week lead time on kits. My goal is to order parts every Wednesday. So when I order parts, it's about 2 weeks from that Wednesday till I get them, and then I'm giving myself a week to ship. So that's 3 weeks. But if you order like right after I ordered parts, then that adds another week. So 3 to 4 week lead time. That's where that's coming from. If you have any questions when you do receive your kit, if you have any issues as you were going through this video or anything, just hit me up, send me an email, hit me up on Instagram, Twitter, or X, and I am very responsive. I'll get back to you as quickly as I can and help you out as much as I can. I want these to work as well for you as they do for me. Thanks for tuning in. I look forward to your orders. I look forward to seeing more of these out in the open. If you print a case for it, design your own case for it, tag me. I want to see what y'all come up with. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.